มาราร่วงกำยำมันพลิกใบฉน้ำก็ต้มก็ติดริกรลออก
The Khmer Rouge is a communist rule that seized Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. The leader was Pol Pot. During the Khmer Rouge, it is estimated that about 1.7 million Cambodians died. Some were murdered, some starved. Some worked so hard till they died. 1.7 million. That's more than 1/5 of the country's population. During the Khmer Rouge, anyone who seemed educated was killed. That included teachers, monks, doctors, or anybody who even wore glasses. They needed no reason to kill you. They would just do it. The slogan of the Cambodian communists was, "To keep you is no benefit, to destroy you is no loss." Indeed, they lived this way. Many were killed from suspicion. Even later, some communist soldiers began killing each other out of paranoia. Everyone was forced to march out of their homes, forced into agricultural labor. The ideal life for Cambodians, in the views of communism, was to reduce them all into peasants, classless, equally uneducated, illiterate, hardworking, and poor. Many were malnourished, starving, eating leaves and insects if they could find. They were worked to death. The collection of rice was made for the Khmer Rouge soldiers and the leaders. Families were torn. Children were taken to be re-educated by the Khmer Rouge. They were trained to think of the ways of communism and taught to snitch on anyone seen as an enemy, even if it meant their own parents. Some parents were executed trying to pass as an uneducated person, as having no formal profession, but their kids told on them. Cambodians usually were told to dig their own grave. They were shot or hit by the shovel to the head. Most of the time, they were just beaten to death, because why waste bullets? Whether or not they died, they were buried and suffocated to death. Some Cambodians confessed to the Khmer Rouge of their identity, or of others' identity, in hoping that they'll survive a chance. After listening, the Khmer Rouge will execute them. Some joined the soldiers, but they will be killed later of suspicions. Some women were taken and raped by soldiers, and then killed. They destroyed all social and cultural life of the Cambodian people. In order for Cambodian people to escape the terrors of war, they had to cross the border to Thailand's refugee camps. They walked city to city all night in dark clothes, through the woods or places that had things like sewage. If they were caught, they'd be killed. Kids were given alcohol so they wouldn't wake up. They had to be quiet. If one fussed too much, they had to be left behind, or else have the entire group be caught and killed. As far as the interview, she watched her cousin be left behind. It leaves you wondering if that cousin is even still alive today. Many families were separated, but this is no surprise to any Cambodian immigrant. In the case of this interview, they made it to Thailand, transported to Philippines for 8 months, and then came to San Francisco, California. This is what separates Cambodian immigrants from some other known migrations. This was a forced migration. They had to escape a corrupted country. You can imagine the hardships and oppression Cambodian immigrants had to face since the war to their arrival in the United States. They did not know where they were going, they just kept moving to leave the war. Once in America, they did not speak the English language nor knew the norms of American life. This is what they had to adapt to, barely in the late 1970s and early 80s. While trying to live the life they can, they face problems in education, economics, and discrimination.
Chết quê tham mê no, no, no. Not when you lose your freedom. Cause I know, man, from that point on, it can only get better.
Education was highly stressed from parents who suffered the Khmer Rouge in 1975. Because of the lack of teachers in Cambodia, parents were very illiterate coming to the United States. One of the most important factors for children to achieve in the United States was and is education, according to their parents. Parents felt their children's education would give them upward mobility. As it states in the Bankruptcy of Virtuous Markets article, receiving an education will give a person a better job and a chance to sustain a higher status in society. The relationship between teachers and students was very difficult. Interviewee 1 was afraid to ask questions in class because she didn't speak the dominant language as well as her peers. Cambodian parents' role was lacking because they didn't speak English. For instance, parents cannot help their children with homework, causing the child to fall further behind in school. Interviewee 1 remembers her experience of non-flexible schools. She was placed in kindergarten for one day and then moved up to first grade. Here she was forced to take the burden of teachers' expectations, curriculum expectations, and the stress of failure. This also caused her regret or her to blame herself for the lack of skills that she might have been able to attain. Interviewee 1 wished her parents would have been able to read her childhood stories in the English language so that she may have wanted to read or enjoyed reading as she got older. From all the 3 interviews, education was brought up as one of the most important points. Education is highly valued not only for upward mobility and basic learning of English, but also because education was forbidden under the Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge came under power of education in 1975. At this time, education, teachers, teaching materials, press, and textbooks were destroyed. All schools and universities that supported education were closed. You might ask, what happened to the educators? Technicians, teachers, principals, and even researchers had to flee the country or stay and be killed. These educators were also seen as suspicious and given harsh treatments. Most were even executed. During the Khmer Rouge, 90% of all teachers were killed. An entire generation of Cambodian children grew up illiterate. Most young people under age 14 lacked basic education.